Hey, Redeeming Hope. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us today. Thanks for joining our online gathering. I'm so glad that you guys are with us. And, during this time of social distancing, as we haven't been able to meet in person, one of the things that we've been really trying to do is find different ways for us to connect. And so, one of those ways is no matter what time you're joining us, whether you're joining us on a Sunday morning to watch this kind of collectively with our church or throughout the week, one of the ways that you could really, really help us is if you could just take a moment right now, pause what you're doing, hit like on this video. If you're on social media, hit like on the video, comment, let us know who you are, where you're joining us from, and then hit that share button. Sharing is caring, right? So specifically, I think one of the things that I really want us to try to do is help get the word of Redeeming Hope out more in Clarksville. I think some of the reason why people haven't been able to connect with us as much is because they just don't know we're here. And so I believe in our vision. I love our vision, and I want other people to grasp our vision. And one of those ways that you can do that is just by hitting the share button right now. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing it, saying, hey, I'm tuning in with Redeeming Hope today, would love to invite you to watch with me. That would be so incredibly helpful for us. And just a few shares could get us out to a lot of people, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people. Now, like I was talking about our vision, I just want to remind us of why we're here and why we're doing what we're doing. You see, Redeeming Hope, we exist as a family of faith that follows Jesus and helps others find him by living all of our lives as missionaries of hope. So this means that we truly want to live and operate like a family first, and we also want to be open to anybody and everybody that can come in wherever they are on their spiritual journey. We want to be a really open, welcoming environment. And so to help us with shaping that environment of openness and welcoming, we have 4 disclaimers that kind of guide everything we do as a church. So those are these. If you're joining us and you do not identify as a follower of Jesus, you're welcome here. If you don't believe that the Bible is true, you're welcome here. If you're hurting, you're welcome here. And if you have questions, you're welcome here. And speaking of questions, really helpful is that every Sunday at 11 o'clock, we do a live Q&A. So there's certain ways that you can join us. So I just want to put that up there, ways that you can join us for our live Q&A. Pretty much wherever you're watching this video, you can just stay there. If you're on YouTube, we're going to go live on YouTube. Facebook, we're going to do Facebook Live. If you're on our website, we're going to have that up and ready to go at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. So if you weren't able to catch us, you can go back and watch us on YouTube or Facebook or any other things with those Q&A. But we'd love to really have you engage with us. So one of the ways you could really help us is engage and comment during this video. So I'll actually be on this video commenting. I think my username is Redbeard9000, or I'll be as Redeeming Hope, but I like Redbeard9000 better. But essentially, I want you to just be asking questions and commenting and engaging. If you agree with something, say, hey, I really like that. But especially if you disagree or if you have questions, please just ask those, and then we'll address those at the 11 o'clock Q&A. Also, if you're joining us and you want to partner with us in the work that God is doing here in Clarksville financially, we'd love to encourage you to do that. You can go online at redeeminghope.org/give, so you can set up a one-time or recurring gift there, or you can find us on Venmo at Redeeming Hope, and all of your gifts are tax deductible. So now that we've got all that out of the way, thank you guys again so much for joining us. We're continuing on in our series in the book of Luke, and we're in Luke 19 today. We're going to be starting in verse 1. This is what Luke 19 verse 1 says. He entered Jericho. This is Jesus. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. And behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. And he was seeking to see who Jesus was. But on account of the crowd, he could not, because he was small in stature. So what did he do? He ran on ahead. He climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for Jesus was about to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. So he hurried and came down and received him joyfully. And when the crowd saw it, they all grumbled and said, he has gone in to be the guest of a man who's a sinner. And Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. This is God's word. My friends, this morning I want to begin by sharing with you something that I absolutely love doing. I love going to the beach. Now, I know it doesn't look like it because you're like, Josh, your complexion isn't really the tanning type, okay? And I know it's not. But I love going to the beach. I love sitting on the beach with a cigar and a good book, okay? And a sun umbrella, because I'm not about that lobster look, okay? I don't want to look like a strawberry at the end of the time. And I've definitely come away looking like a strawberry sometimes. So now a nice chair, a book, a cigar, and a nice sun umbrella. This is the perfect scene. So I want to show you a picture of like my perfect scene, right? This beach, this beautiful, pristine, relaxing vision. It actually can become a pit of despair. It can become an embarrassment in a heartbeat. You say, how? This looks beautiful. This looks amazing. Who wouldn't want to be on that beach? How can this become a pit of despair and embarrassment? How? My question to you is this. Have you ever had a beach chair break on you before? I have. I'm a bigger guy. So beach chairs have always been a problem for me, especially those tiny ones low to the ground like it's in the picture. Look at it. Look at that thing. It's barely a chair. It's like a hammock between two chopsticks in the sand. That's what it sure as heck feels like when I sit on it. All right, so when I go to the beach, guys, I do what most big guys do. Okay, I take one of those chairs, even the more sturdy ones. I can't get those really low ones, but here's what I do when I get to the beach. I ease into it, okay? I like to ease. All right, I'm going to do it again because I like doing that. It's kind of fun. I ease into it. So if you ask me, do I trust this chair? I would say, yeah, kind of. I wouldn't be 100% certain. I'd say I trust the chair, but really, I would really not trust the chair. I'd kind of ease into it, let the sand settle a little bit, maybe not move that suddenly because I've definitely had beach chairs break on me. So the question is, what would prove to me that I trusted that the chair would hold me up? What would prove it is me just sitting in it confidently, just flopping down on it. Just like little kids come flopping on people, and you're like, I don't know if you've ever seen a kid like jump off a couch into their parents' arms, but they're trusting that the parent's going to grab them, right? It's the same thing with sitting in this chair, right? If you just flop down the chair, you totally trust that the chair is going to hold you up, and I really envy you if you can do that with these types of chairs, okay? But I've definitely done that before. I've definitely flopped down on a chair and definitely regretted that decision. But the idea is that the truth is I don't really trust these tiny chairs, and that's why I like ease into it and don't really like move around very much. And you can tell whether or not I have faith in the chair, not by what I say, but by what I do. Because I could tell you all day, man, I trust that chair. I believe that the chair is going to hold me up. But if I like ease into it and like use my quads and I don't really like trust it, you're going to see by my actions. And that's what we're talking about this morning, is we're talking about the actions that follow a true faith in Jesus. So what happens when you truly believe in Jesus is that your actions always follow a true faith in Jesus. So our main point for today is this, that our actions change when we become our truest self by responding to Jesus with faith and proximity. Let me read that again. We're going to keep that up there. Our actions change when we become our truest self by responding to Jesus with faith and proximity. So that's our main point for today. We're going to go over three main points, and that's we're going to look at Zacchaeus' position. We're going to look at Jesus' immediate response, and then we're going to see Zacchaeus' changed identity. So before we jump in there, let me just set the scene for the text that we're coming to today. So Jesus is steadily on a path to Jerusalem. He knows he's going to go to Jerusalem. He's going to be tortured. He's going to die. And he ultimately believes that he's going to be resurrected again. And he's teaching and healing along the way. And he's coming to Jericho. Now, Jericho is the final stop on the way to Jerusalem. Remember, Jesus sent ahead a bunch of people to go to all these different towns that he was going to go to. They kind of prepped, they kind of preached, they got people ready. Jesus would come to the town, preach and heal, and do all these wonderful miracles and move on to the next town. So we're at the very end of Jesus' journey, right before Jerusalem, his death and his resurrection. And then Luke specifically places these two stories back to back, okay? He places the first story, which we looked at last week, which was the appeal of salvation. That's the blind beggar sitting outside the gates of Jericho. And he's crying, "Son of David, have mercy on me." So we see the appeal of salvation. That was the first week. But then we see a different perspective on salvation with Zacchaeus as Jesus enters into the city. So he comes into the city and he has a second encounter. But both encounters, both the blind beggar we talked about last week and the action of salvation, Zacchaeus, this week, both of them revolve around salvation, and it's very poignant that Luke places this here because, again, we're on the cusp of Jesus' ultimate act of salvation when he hits Jerusalem with his sacrificial death and his miraculous resurrection. Okay, so Luke is kind of preparing us to see the posture of salvation. So we looked last week, again, at the appeal of salvation. This week, we're looking at Zacchaeus, titling The Action of Salvation. So we come to first see Zacchaeus' position, and that is Luke 19, 1-4. And I want to read those again. This is what it says. He entered Jericho. This is Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. And behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. And he was seeking to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd he could not, because he was small in stature. So he ran on ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was about to pass that way. So remember, Jesus is on the way to Jerusalem, and I want you to think, especially when you read the narrative, I want you to think about it like scenes, right? Like scenes in a movie. You see one person you kind of track with Jesus, right? You have a tracking shot of Jesus walking up to Jericho, but immediately the scene shifts. And we see this short man named Zacchaeus. And we find a lot about Zacchaeus in these two short verses. And I want to kind of walk through who is this guy Zacchaeus? What was he doing, okay? And who was he supposed to be? Okay, so who is he? It says he's a chief tax collector. Most times tax collectors were kind of a smaller level thing. So he was very good at his job. He was a chief tax collector. Now, what kind of taxes did he collect? Now, the Romans would collect income tax, right? So they'd essentially kind of knock on the door of your house, right? And they'd say, oh, you got 5 people in this house and you're a baker. Okay, you owe this amount of money, kind of standard to the government. That's not what Zacchaeus was doing. Tax collectors like Zacchaeus collected taxes on imports and exports, okay? And they also collected taxes on goods sold in the marketplace. So essentially, this wasn't like a clear, direct tax, like you knock on the door, there's 5 people in the room, you're a baker. Very clear, standard tax from the Roman government. This was purposefully and intentionally unclear, the taxes that these people made. It was ambiguous. So what Zacchaeus would do is he'd be kind of walking around the marketplace, right? And he'd come up to someone in Jericho that he knows, and he would kind of open up a whole pot of grain, right? Let's just use grain as an example. You'd look in, he'd say, oh, it looks like there's about $10 worth of grain in here. I'm going to charge you 2. So do you see, it's not measured, it's not standardized, it's very ambiguous, and it was ambiguous for a reason. See, how he got this job was it's like a franchise. He purchased the rights to be able to be a tax collector in Jericho. And what he would do is the Roman government said, I've got a quota that you got to meet. Okay, so if there's 10,000 people in the city, we need $10,000. That's just for simplicity's sake. So anything over and above what Zacchaeus taxed the people was his income, right? So he could walk up to somebody that he doesn't like in the city, and he opens up some of their grain, and he says, yeah, it looks like there's $20 worth of grain here. I'm going to take $10 from you. He could tax him 50%. And he could walk up to another person who maybe was his friend. He'd say, oh, it looks like there's $20 worth of stuff here. I'm only going to tax you $1. And the thing is, because there's no standardization, he could totally cheat people, and there was no recourse. There was no way for anybody to know whether that Zacchaeus was truly taxing them correctly. And again, remember, he just had a quota to give to the Roman government. Anything over and above that, he could keep as his personal salary. It's intentionally confusing. Nobody can appeal it. Nobody can argue it. So you got to think, this guy was a Jewish person. Okay? He is hated by the people of Jericho. He's a betrayer of his own people. I want you to think about this. Your countryman, a fellow Jewish person, he's opening up your baskets of grain with the authority of a foreign Roman government who is oppressing you. And he can charge you whatever he wants to, and there's no way that you can have any recourse. Can you imagine how hated this man must be? So not only do we see that he's a betrayer of his own people, that his salary is literally made when he extorts other people and cheats them. It also says that he was rich. Now, Jericho was on the route to Jerusalem, as we've already said, and it was like a major highway. And Zacchaeus was really good at his job. But there's something very unique about Jericho that made Zacchaeus like Bill Gates rich. And I want to show you a picture of this, okay? This is a picture of balsam, okay? Jericho was a huge producer and exporter of balsam, and it was a tree resin. It was a specific type of tree resin that was used for medical and medicinal purposes. It was very valuable. Now, you can look at it right now and see that it's not easily measured. Like, you can't just kind of put it on you can't just like pick it up, and it's not like a one grain of sand or one chunk of meat. Like, it was very ambiguous how much it was. And this is what, this was made to bring people health and healing, but really what Zacchaeus was doing was using it to extort and cheat people out of money, okay? So he is a chief tax collector. He is super rich because what he's doing is this export of balsam. What he's doing is he's overestimating the taxes on this balsam, and he's keeping all of it for himself. So we find the third piece, which was somewhat minor to the story, but it helps us understand it, that he was small in stature, okay? So he couldn't see above the rest of the crowd. So we find that he was a chief tax collector, he was rich, and he was a short dude, okay? And that's kind of who he was, but it's also important to look at what he was doing. Okay, so this man, he hears that Jesus is in town, okay? And I don't have it up on the screen right now, and that's okay, but it said in verse 3, he was seeking to see who Jesus was. Like, Zacchaeus, there's something about Jesus that Zacchaeus was drawn to. He was seeking Jesus. He was trying to see him, but he couldn't because he was such a small dude. So it says that he ran ahead and climbed a tree. Now I want you to think about this. This is the equivalent of like a Bill Gates type guy, okay? He has wealth in the millions, maybe billions of dollars equivalent to this day. Like, this guy probably had an entourage. He probably had paid security because the people were so angry with him because he's taking advantage of them. And he's taking advantage of them in one of the really richest cities in Israel at the time because of this balsam that I showed you a second ago. So he's got the perfect setup. He can charge people whatever he wants to. He can give his friends really good tax breaks. He can earn and buy his way into the upper crust of society. He's a Jewish person, but he's got the authority of the Roman government behind him. He's probably got a whole host of bodyguards, okay? Now, I'm not saying that Bill Gates is a really terrible person. I'm just saying, like, his wealth is that of like a Bill Gates or an Elon Musk type of guy, okay? So what he's doing is he's walking down. I want you to just picture this man. He's probably got an entourage of people. He hears that Jesus is coming, and he's like, I got to see Jesus. And he runs. Like this man, this man of good importance and stature, he runs and he climbs a tree like a 10-year-old because he needed to see Jesus. There was something in him that was drawn to Jesus, and it says he was seeking Jesus. And I just think it's so incredibly interesting. He was trying to seek after Jesus, and he was climbing a tree. And I think that's something that we're going to address here in a minute, something that makes Zacchaeus very unique. The third question that I want to ask, that's not entirely up front in the text, but it's still there, is what was Zacchaeus supposed to be? Who is this man supposed to be, and who is he? Because he's obviously not supposed to be this betrayer of his people and tax collector. And I looked up the name Zacchaeus because I thought that's such an interesting name. It's not very prevalent in the scriptures, and it's based in a Hebrew root word that's very interesting. The Hebrew root for it is Zek, and Zek means righteousness. You see, Zacchaeus was supposed to be, his word Zacchaeus literally means a man of innocence, a man of purity, a man of righteousness. That's literally what his name means. When he was born and his parents named him, they named him Zacchaeus so that he would be a man of innocence and purity and righteousness. That's what he was supposed to be. But his job and his wealth and his deception and his betrayal of his people, it made him anything but that. He was not innocent. He was to be blamed. He was not pure. He was impure. He wasn't righteous. He was unrighteous. But this is what's so interesting. His actions to run to the tree to seek after Jesus, it indicates something about what this unrighteous man believes. You see, he believes that Jesus is important. In fact, the scriptures tell us he was seeking Jesus. He's looking. He's desiring something about Jesus. He's got to get close to Jesus, and he's going to do whatever it takes to do it. There's something about Jesus that's drawing Zacchaeus in. This rich man realizes Jesus has something that money can't buy. Jesus has something that he doesn't have. And he's drawing towards Jesus. And that action, that seeking, my friends, that action of Zacchaeus is true faith. Now, what is true faith, you say? Now, there's a little slide I want to put up here. What is true faith? And it's three things. And you can think of the acronym HBO, like the TV channel. Hearing, believing, and obeying. That's what true faith is. See, Zacchaeus heard that Jesus was coming into town. There's something deep within Zacchaeus that believed that Jesus is who he says he is. He believed that there's something that he was lacking that Jesus could give him. But it didn't just end there. He obeyed. There was some sort of action. There was some sort of response. He wanted to be in proximity to Jesus, and he was going to do whatever it takes, even if it looked shameful, in order to get close to Jesus. See, we don't see Zacchaeus' words. We see his actions. He wants to get close to Jesus, and there is faith in those actions that he takes. And that's Zacchaeus' position. That's his state. That's what's going on with Zacchaeus. It's conflict. He's an unrighteous man, but he has faith, and he wants to get close to Jesus. And he's responding out of that faith. He's hearing it, he's believing it, but then he's obeying it. There's an action that he's taking to get close to this man who he thinks has something for him. So then we see Jesus' immediate response. Look with me at Luke 19, 5-7. And when Jesus came to this place, he looked up. He saw him in the tree and he said, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So Zacchaeus hurried. He scrambled down. He received him joyfully. And when the crowd saw it, they all grumbled, "He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner." My friends, we see that Jesus immediately stops when he sees a need. 100%. Stops. Pause the party train. He stops and he turns to Zacchaeus in the tree. Now, remember, when Jesus encounters true, genuine faith, so we looked at last week the blind beggar. We looked at the woman a couple weeks ago with the issue of blood who just touches the hem of his garment in faith so that she would be healed. The woman who was a sinner, who came in and cried at his feet and anoints him with the most valuable thing she had, this beautiful perfume. When Jesus encounters true, genuine faith, he always responds to faith and need. He always responds to it. He comes close to it. He's drawn to it. And so he sees true faith and he immediately responds. But look at what Jesus doesn't say. Jesus doesn't say, "You filthy sinner." Jesus doesn't say, "You betrayer of my people." Jesus doesn't say, "You thief." Now, Jesus had every right to say that to Zacchaeus. He was all those things. He was a sinner. He was a betrayer. He was a thief. And Jesus would have been completely justified in calling Zacchaeus out. But what does Jesus do? Jesus' immediate response is, "Eat with me." His immediate response is, "I want to be in a friendship with you." That's what that meant today. When you come over to my house, I want to be friends with you. I want to build a friendship with you. Many of you have eaten over at my house and had steak or chicken over at my place. And that invitation is, I want to be friends with you. But even on a deeper level in that culture, to eat with someone was a very intimate thing. It was a trust thing. It's inviting them into your house. It's inviting them into your life. It's inviting them into a friendship. So Jesus is inviting Zacchaeus into real, face-to-face brotherly intimacy. That's what Jesus is doing. That's his response to this filthy sinner who is a betrayer of his people, who is not innocent, not pure, not righteous, not living out of his name. Jesus says, "Hey, I want to come eat with you, man. I want to be friends with you. I want to spend time with you." Now look at what the crowd's reaction is. The crowd's reaction is grumbling. Look with me at Luke 19:7. They say, they all grumbled. "He has gone in to be the guest of a man who is a sinner." My friends, the religious, rule-following crowd hates it. They hate that Jesus wants intimacy with that Zacchaeus. They hate that he wants friendship with Zacchaeus. They know what Jesus is doing, and they don't like it. And here's the deeper thing. They really don't just hate what Jesus is doing, they hate Jesus. The crowd hates Jesus because what Jesus stands for is coming close to the sinner, coming close to those who are broken, coming close to those who express true, genuine faith through their actions. Jesus comes close to those people regardless of who they are. And the crowd, the religious, rule-following crowd, the people that grew up going to the synagogue every week and hearing the stories, but yet missing the heart of God, they hate the grace of Jesus. And really what they're doing is they're hating Jesus in this moment. So the crowd's reaction is grumbling. Zacchaeus' reaction, joy. Look at what he says in Luke 19:6. He says, "So Zacchaeus hurried and came down and received him joyfully." That word receive literally means to welcome under one's roof, to receive as a guest. And his reaction to Jesus is immediate joy. He just loves that Jesus is giving him attention. He loves Jesus. My friends, the religious, rule-following crowd hates Jesus. And they hate what Jesus is doing. But Zacchaeus, the betrayer of his people, Zacchaeus, the man who cheats his fellow people with the authority of the Roman government, Zacchaeus loves Jesus. He loves what Jesus is doing. What's the difference? Genuine faith. My friends, this is what Jesus does consistently throughout his life. What he does consistently throughout the past 2,000 years of the church. My friends, Jesus gives joy to those who are in need and have genuine faith. If you're in need and you have faith, you believe that he is who he says he is. You hear it, believe it, obey it. Jesus gives you joy. But my friends, he repulses those who don't see their need and don't truly believe in him. Jesus is repulsive. People grumble at Jesus. They hate the message of Jesus. The religious, rule-following spirit hates Jesus because they don't see their need and they don't have genuine faith. But those who see their need and have faith, Jesus gives an infinite amount of joy. So we see that Jesus' immediate response is friendship, intimacy, proximity. Next, we see Zacchaeus' changed identity. So I want to fast forward about an hour, okay? So there's an open meal. People are eating. The room is filled, okay? They're astonished that this great, amazing teacher is eating with such a betrayer, such a sinner, such a thief, such a low-life guy, the Bernie Madoff of his time. And then something happens. Look with me at Luke 19, verse 8. This is what it says. "And Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, 'Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold.'" So first we see this amazing thing. Zacchaeus becomes a Christian. They're like, how? Did he pray a prayer? Did he pray the sinner's prayer? Did he get on his knees? No. He calls Jesus Lord. Very, very interesting. He's literally saying, Jesus is my king. I am under his kingdom. But look, he is coming to live under the authority of this new king in his life, and he's going to change his actions as a result of it. So he doesn't just call Jesus Lord, but he then acts as if Jesus is his Lord. He's coming under the authority of a king with a new kingdom, a new way of living. And he says that I'm going to give half of my goods to the poor, and he's going to pay back the people he defrauded 4 times what he defrauded them. My friends, this is the equivalent of millions, maybe even billions of dollars in our day. Giving it all away, paying every single person what he defrauded back 4 times what he took. This isn't just restitution. This is like Bernie Madoff coming to every single person that he defrauded, and he paid them 4 times what he took back from them. Like, this is more than what interest would be. This is more than they would have earned if they would have invested it. Like, this is overly amazing. This isn't just restitution. My friends, this was going to change Zacchaeus' entire life. Like, this might make him destitute. Like, his lifestyle is going to change. How he lives is going to change. He's going to give away most of his wealth. He's going to be a different person permanently if he does these things. Like, this isn't just a light action. This is taking everything that he stole, all of his wealth, the millions, maybe even billions of dollars, and giving it back to everybody that he wronged, to make restitution for all of the ways that he has defrauded people. And these extraordinary actions demonstrate a changed heart. How has he changed? It's proximity and faith. True faith and and proximity to Jesus. So what is true faith? I want to put this slide up again because I just want to remind you of what true faith really is. It's hearing, believing, and obeying. So Zacchaeus heard who Jesus was. He believed who Jesus was and then saw himself, right? He believed in Jesus, but he also believed that what Jesus said about him was true, that he's broken, that he needs Jesus. And then his obedience, he obeyed, right? And his belief was demonstrated in action. He didn't just climb a tree, but he gave all of his sordid wealth away. He gave all of his unearned wealth that he stole from his fellow countrymen away. He heard it, he believed it, and he obeyed it. My friends, this is the difference between real Christians and cultural Christians. So what I'm so concerned about as we are planting here in Clarksville, Tennessee, and as many of our friends came from the Southern church context, is that many people have grown up and they hear it, right? They believe it intellectually, but they don't believe it in their heart that Jesus is who he says he is. They believe that Jesus is the Savior, like we talked about last week, but they don't believe that Jesus is their Savior. Because there's a lot of people that I've met that don't believe that they're bad enough to need saving. And this is what deeply concerns me, is that people hear it and intellectually ascribe to it, but don't truly believe it in their heart because their actions aren't different. And so you see people that show up to church on Sunday, and no offense if you wear khaki pants, but they wear khaki pants and loafers and polo shirts, and they look the part, and they have their Bible, and they walk around, and they look good, and they be good, and they act good, and they smile, and they shake everybody's hands, and bless your brother, bless your brother, bless your brother. And then they get in the car, and they're screaming at their wife, they're screaming at their kids. They're not discipling their family. They're not reading the scriptures consistently. They're not being consistently repentant. They're not in proximity to Jesus. My friends, if those are not people that truly believe. Because if you truly believe, your life is changed. You have conviction under the Holy Spirit. You come under the lordship of Jesus, which means that you come under the authority of King Jesus. And in his kingdom, your actions begin to change. And not only that, but you begin to want and desire proximity to Jesus, reading the scriptures consistently, praying consistently. I have a really good friend of mine who I've known for about 2 years. I've discipled him, and now he's discipling others. And when he shares his story, I love it when he shares his story. But he says these words when he talks about his story. He said, I was dying in my goodness. He grew up here in Clarksville. He grew up going to church. He had a wife and kids and a beautiful house and good cars and a great job. It's just leisure and ease. And he said, but I would go to church every Sunday. I'd punch the clock and I'd come home. But he said, I realized that none of this was satisfying. I was dying in my goodness. And my friends, that's not what I want for you. I want you to have true, genuine, real faith like Zacchaeus that hears the message of Jesus, that doesn't just intellectually ascribe to it, but truly deep in your heart believes it, that sees God for who he is, perfect and holy, but then also sees yourself for who you are, sinful and in need, like Zacchaeus saw himself, needing Jesus, running to Jesus, and then you respond in obedience, that your actions begin to change. That's what true faith is. That's what marks a real Christian. That's what marks a person who's been changed by faith in proximity to Jesus. Now, we talk about this idea of changed identity. So the question is, where do we see that in the text? Where does identity come into play? And it all goes back to the name, Zacchaeus. Remember, he was meant to be innocent, pure, and righteous. That's what he was supposed to be. That's what his parents named him. That was his true identity. But his job and his wealth and his deception, it made him not innocent. It made him guilty of so many terrible crimes against his fellow people. It made him impure. And it made him unrighteous. He wasn't living out of his true identity. He was named and created to be Zacchaeus, but he was really living the exact opposite of his name. But here's the beauty. When Zacchaeus encounters Jesus in true faith, he hears it, believes it, obeys it. When he encounters Jesus in true faith, he gives everything away, gives half of everything away. He makes restitution for all the wrongs that he made. But more important than the external change, his identity went from wealth and power to being a slave to King Jesus, to acknowledging that he is the Lord, not his wealth, not his power. Those were the things that lorded over him. But then he comes under a new Lord, a new King, King Jesus, living out of King Jesus' kingdom. And then when he comes under the lordship of Jesus, he says, you are my Lord, and I'm going to act like you're my Lord, and I'm going to come under your authority. I'm going to live like you're calling me to live. That's when Zacchaeus becomes who he was truly created to be. That's when he becomes innocent. That's when he becomes pure. That's when he becomes righteous, not because of anything he does, but because of who he identifies with, who he comes under, the lordship of King Jesus, innocent, pure, and righteous. Our main point for today is this, that our actions change when we become our truest self by responding to Jesus with faith and proximity. And really the question that we have is, what changed Zacchaeus? What made this dramatic change from this terrible chief tax thief, Bernie Madoff, to a saint? What changed him? It was faith and proximity together. That's what produced change in his actions. So my friends, do you want to change your actions today? Do you want to be different? Do you want to be a different person? Then you need to change your identity. Your identity needs to be changed to come under the lordship of Jesus. Your actions flow out of your identity, right? So what you do flows out of who you truly are, right? Zacchaeus he wasn't a bad person because he did bad things. He did bad things because he was a bad person, because he was who he says he was. His identity showed and demonstrated out in his actions, okay? So his actions didn't make him a bad person. He was a bad person, and then his actions followed, all right? So we've got to change our identity to change our actions. You don't just change the actions on the surface. You change the identity. So my question is, how do you change your identity? Well, the great thing is you can't. You can't change your identity. You are who you are. The only way that your identity can change is by the power of Jesus in your life. And it's through proximity and faith in Jesus. That's the only way that your identity can change. Proximity and faith in Jesus. So do you want to change your identity so that your actions change? Do you want to change who you are at the core so your actions that flow out of you, what you do when you're alone, what you do when nobody watches you? Do you want those things to change? Well, your identity can change. And here's how it happens. If you're not yet a follower of Jesus, I want to invite you to believe in the real Jesus, to have true faith that hears, believes, and obeys. Look with me at John 7:38. Jesus says these words, "Whoever believes in me, as the scripture has said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water." My friends, this is what happens when you believe in Jesus. When you believe in him, God changes your heart, so that what flows out of you isn't unrighteousness. What flows out of you isn't impurity. What flows out of you isn't guilt. What flows out of you is life. Life begins to flow out of the Christian when you choose to follow Jesus. When you put a stake in the ground and say, yes, I believe that Jesus is my Lord. Like Zacchaeus, you're responding in faith. You're seeking Jesus. Jesus will always come to you when you seek him. When you claim him to be Lord over your life, your heart changes, so what flows out of you is different. What flows out of you is flowing out of your new identity under the lordship of King Jesus. Look with me at John 11. This is just another beautiful passage. Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die." Do you believe this? My friends, this is flopping in the chair on the beach. That's what it looks like to come to Jesus in true faith. Hear it, believe it, obey it. It's not just giving lip service to belief, but genuinely trusting Jesus with the true weight of all of your sin, all of your brokenness, all of your identity, trusting Jesus even with your life. And better than the beach chair, Jesus gives you true rest. He gives you true peace. He gives you true security and identity. All you have to do is truly believe. Not just give lip service to it. Not just say, yeah, I believe that Jesus was a real person, but not just say, yeah, I believe that Jesus is the Savior, but saying Jesus is my Savior because I need him. That's the invitation. Now, if you look back in your life and you have done this, you've put your life in Jesus' hands in a moment. You've called Jesus Lord, but you're still struggling with your actions. I'm right there with you. I get frustrated. I get angry. I get irritated. I don't trust Jesus all the time in every way. And that's what the nature of being human is. So, my friends, not just to have faith, but then the invitation for you is to enter in with Jesus in proximity. Look with me at Revelation 3:20. This famous passage, but the context is a little different. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. This is Jesus speaking. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him, and he with me. Don't you notice the parallels here? I stand at the door and knock, Jesus wants friendship with you. Jesus wants proximity to you. He wants to be close to you. Now, this is very interesting. This text is not directed at unbelievers. This text is not directed at those who have not yet chosen to follow Jesus. This text where Jesus is standing at the door and knocking is directed at believers. It's directed at people who've already made the decision to choose to follow Jesus. My friends, this is flopping in the chair and sitting under the shade day by day by day next to Jesus. That's what this is. Proximity to Jesus, time with Jesus, closeness, intimacy, friendship with Jesus is developing the habit of flopping down in faith. Because there's certain areas where it's very easy to trust God, right? But there's also certain areas of our life where it's more difficult to trust God. And so for me, I've got certain areas where I can operate in faith, and that's great. And there's certain areas of my life where I really struggle to live out my faith. And so it's consistently getting in proximity to Jesus, consistently flopping on the chair, sitting under the shade next to Jesus, letting his rest and peace fill you consistently so that in every area of your life you become under the lordship of King Jesus. It's not just making a decision then doing nothing. It's daily spending time with Jesus in proximity. Now, as we close out our time, I was kind of thinking to myself, was Zacchaeus just a one-hit wonder, right? Like, did he really do all of these things? Like, this was millions, maybe even billions of dollars. Did this really happen? Or when Jesus rolled, did Zacchaeus just go off, right? Well, there's actually a mention of Zacchaeus in early church history, and it's coming out of this book, a collection of sayings called the Apostolic Constitutions. It was a history of early Christianity. It was only written about less than 400 years, about 375 AD. It was written around then, and it was a collection of the early church history and how the church operated in the first 3-4 centuries after Jesus died and rose again. And some of the earliest records of the church after the scriptures mentions Zacchaeus. And I want to read you this quote. It's a little bit long, but I think it'll be really helpful. Now, concerning those bishops who have been ordained in our lifetime, we let you know that they are these: James, the bishop of Jerusalem, the brother of our Lord, upon whose death the second was Simon, the son of Cleopas. Now listen to this. Of Caesarea of Palestine, the first was Zacchaeus, who was once a publican, which is another word for tax collector. My friend, Zacchaeus didn't just do this and keep living his life. Zacchaeus became a bishop. He was a pastor of pastors. He was a leader of leaders. He had an entire region under his apostolic authority, under his authority to lead and guide and direct people. He was elevated to be the first bishop of Caesarea. And this is so beautiful because when you follow Jesus, your life has eternal, lasting significance. And you can go from being a tax collector to a saint. But even on a deeper level, you can find yourself when you find Jesus. You become who you truly were created to be: pure, innocent, holy, righteous. You become your best self, and you find yourself when you lose yourself in King Jesus. This is the invitation of faith in action. It's finding your true identity, knowing who God is, knowing who you are, and coming under the lordship of King Jesus. And when you find Jesus, you find lasting salvation. Look with me at the end of Luke as Jesus closes up this story. And Jesus said to him, Zacchaeus, today salvation has come to this house, since he is also a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. My friends, Jesus comes to seek and to save you today. You don't seek after Jesus. He is seeking after you. He's looking for you. You see, what's interesting about Zacchaeus is that Jesus called Zacchaeus by his name, by who he was supposed to be, by his true identity. And my friends, Jesus is calling your name today. And that might be either to believe in him, to respond in true faith, hearing, believing, and obeying, like Zacchaeus originally did with climbing the tree and speaking out the name Lord. He might be calling your name to come to him in salvation. Or maybe Jesus is calling you to have consistent proximity to him. That's spiritual maturity. Maybe he's calling your name so that you will become more like your true identity, like who you were truly created to be. See, our Father is calling you to continually be changed in real ways by a deep, close, real friendship with Jesus. You see, our actions change when we become our truest self by responding to Jesus with faith and proximity. Let me read that one more time. Our main point is that this: our actions change when we become our truest self by responding to Jesus with faith and proximity. If you're joining us here on a Sunday morning, if you're watching with us live, as many of us are doing, I just want to invite you to stay on for Q&A. And I want us to talk in the Q&A here in a few minutes at 11 a.m. Central Time, as I want us to talk about what it means to be a friend of Jesus. And so we're going to address some of your questions and thoughts from this, but towards the end of that time, I want to talk about some real practical ways that you can be a friend of Jesus, what it looks like to have proximity to him. So wherever you're watching this, ways to join us: website, Facebook, YouTube, pretty much wherever you're watching this, you can just stay on, and in a few minutes, we're going to be doing our live Q&A. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We love you, and we look forward to seeing you in a few minutes. Take care. Bye.